What if I told you there are trees on your farm, or even in your backyard, that could produce $150, even $200 a gallon? I'm not talking about maple syrup. I'm talking about 7 hidden syrup sources that most farmers overlook. And yet they're creating premium, high-value income streams from trees you might already have. These syrups are selling out at farmers markets, gourmet restaurants, and online. Some chefs are paying multiple times more than they would for maple, just for these rare flavors. We're counting down the 7 most profitable syrups. I'll share real-world pricing, examples from farmers who are already making this work, and the things you need to know about labeling and regulations. And make sure you stick around until the end, because the syrup at number 1 sells for up to $200 per gallon. And almost nobody is producing it at scale yet. If you're looking for a way to diversify your farm income using trees you might already have, you won't want to miss this. Most syrups are made from sap. Hickory syrup flips that upside down. Instead of tapping the tree, you boil the bark to extract flavor, and the result is one of the most unique gourmet syrups on the market right now. Hickory syrup has a rich, smoky, almost buttery taste that chefs love, and because so few producers make it, demand far outweighs supply. That scarcity drives premium pricing. Jars often sell for $15 to $20 per pint, which works out to $120 to $200 per gallon. Here's a real example. A small producer in Tennessee makes limited batches of hickory syrup every season. They sell at farmers markets and to a handful of local restaurants, and they sell out every single year. In fact, most producers say their biggest problem isn't making it, it's keeping up with demand. And from a production standpoint, it's surprisingly approachable. Since you're working with bark instead of sap, you don't need special tapping gear or a huge evaporator. Many small farms produce hickory syrup in small batches using little more than collected bark, filtered water, and a home kitchen setup. Now there is one thing you need to know if you plan to sell it. Because it's usually made by boiling bark and adding sugar, hickory syrup is classified differently than maple or walnut syrup in most states. That means your labeling needs to be accurate. You can't just call it hickory syrup in some regions. You may need to label it hickory bark extract syrup. Always check your local food safety guidelines. For small-scale direct-to-consumer sales, though, like farmers markets or online, hickory syrup is one of the easiest, highest-margin alternative syrups you can start with. So if you've been looking for a low-barrier way to break into the niche syrup market, hickory is an incredible entry point. But as good as this one is, our next syrup is exploding in popularity with gourmet chefs across the country. And it's growing all over the U.S., completely untapped by most farms. If you're looking for a syrup that's gaining momentum fast in the gourmet world, Sycamore syrup is one to watch. Most people see sycamore trees as yard shade or street trees, but chefs are falling in love with its buttery, slightly caramelized flavor. Here's the opportunity. Sycamores grow almost everywhere in the eastern half of the U.S., but hardly anyone is tapping them commercially. That scarcity is driving premium prices. Bottles often sell for $80 to $120 per gallon, and many producers report selling out to local restaurants within weeks. A farmer in Kentucky started tapping just 20 sycamores last year. With minimal setup, a few taps, buckets, and a small evaporator, they brought in over $3,500 in syrup sales in their first season, selling entirely direct to consumers and 2 upscale restaurants. From a regenerative standpoint, this is another win. Tapping sycamores doesn't damage the tree when done properly, and adding them into a diverse syrup plan lets farmers stack profits using species they already have on their land. Sycamore is also straightforward from a regulatory standpoint. In most states, it's treated just like maple syrup. You'll need to label it accurately as sycamore syrup. And if you plan to sell wholesale, some regions require sugar content checks and certified bottling spaces. And while Sycamore is gaining traction, our next syrup has already exploded among gourmet chefs. And thanks to USDA-backed research, it sells for up to 4 times the price of maple. Birch syrup is one of the fastest-growing alternative syrup markets, especially among high-end restaurants and farm-to-table chefs. It has a darker, richer, more caramelized flavor than maple. And because supply is so limited, it consistently commands premium prices. Retail pricing typically ranges from $80 to $120 per gallon, but in some regions it sells for even more. A small producer in Alaska nets $25,000 a season tapping just 75 birch trees, and they routinely sell out before the season even ends. Here's what makes birch niche is the window for tapping is short, often just 10 to 14 days, but the payoff is high. In many areas, you can tap birch after maple season ends, meaning farmers can stack 2 revenue cycles without overlapping labor. That's why producers in Vermont, Alaska, and Minnesota are adding birch alongside maple. They're stacking a second syrup season on the same evaporators, buckets, and gear they already own. From a regenerative farming perspective, birch fits beautifully. Integrating it into an existing sugar bush diversifies production and buffers farmers against market fluctuations, which is critical. Birch syrup is generally treated just like maple syrup when it comes to regulations, but you'll need to label it accurately as birch syrup and not imply that it's maple. Some states require you to check sugar levels and process it in a certified kitchen if you plan to sell wholesale to restaurants or retailers. For small batch direct-to-consumer sales, the rules are far more relaxed, which is why so many birch producers focus on selling through farmers markets and direct chef relationships. If you're near urban centers with chef-driven demand, birch can be one of the most profitable niche syrups to add, especially when combined with maple or sycamore for multi-stream production. But here's where things get really interesting. While birch is trending, our next syrup, backed by USDA-funded research, isn't just a chef favorite. It's becoming one of the highest value syrups in America, selling for 3 to 4 times the price of maple. And if you already have the trees, you might not need to plant a thing. This is where things start getting exciting. Black walnut syrup isn't just rare. It's one of the highest value syrups on the market right now, and USDA-backed research shows just how profitable it can be. The flavor is richer, darker, and more complex than maple. Chefs describe it as bold and earthy with a hint of butterscotch. And because it's so hard to find, the demand is massive. Retail prices range from $120 to $150 per gallon, sometimes more in premium markets. Here's where the opportunity gets even better. A USDA-funded SARE grant helped farmers in the Midwest scale up black walnut syrup production. What they discovered shocked even the researchers. Black walnut syrup sells for 3 to 4 times the price of maple syrup in many markets. One farmer involved in the project used an existing stand of wild walnut trees. No planting, no waiting years for growth, and generated thousands in additional income just by adding taps. The report concluded that black walnut syrup represents an underutilized, high-value opportunity for small farms that already have these trees on their land. From a regenerative agriculture perspective, this is huge. You're working with what's already growing naturally, creating income without changing the ecosystem. Black walnut syrup follows the same basic regulations as maple in most states. Labels need to clearly say black walnut syrup, and wholesale producers may be required to process in a certified kitchen and verify sugar content before bottling. For most small farms, the simplest route is to sell directly to consumers or chefs, where the oversight is minimal and the margins are significantly higher. If you've got black walnuts growing on your property, this is one of the fastest ways to tap into a premium, underserved market. And if you think that's impressive, wait until you see the next syrup. It turns problem trees into profits while helping restore ecological balance on your farm. Here's one that surprises almost everyone. Invasive species syrups. Trees like tree of heaven, box elder, and sweet gum aren't just nuisance plants. In the right markets, their sap can be turned into high-value gourmet syrups. Tree of heaven, for example, often considered a nightmare for farmers, produces a syrup with a unique, complex flavor profile chefs are paying a premium to experiment with. Bottles of invasive syrups can sell for $50 to $80 per gallon, and because so few people are producing them, the demand among adventurous restaurants is growing fast. Managed the right way, tapping invasives can offset removal costs and turn a land management headache into premium product. One Ohio farm partnered with a local chef network to supply small-batch Tree of Heaven syrup. They produced only 30 gallons last year but sold every drop in pre-sale contracts before the first tap opened. Because syrups from trees like Tree of Heaven or sweet gum aren't part of traditional maple frameworks, you'll need to label them clearly by species. For example, Tree of Heaven syrup. Before you produce at scale, it's smart to check with your local extension office to confirm the species is safe for food use and that there aren't any regional restrictions. And as exciting as that is, the next syrup pushes scarcity, pricing, and chef demand to a completely different level. It's so rare that bottles often sell out months before tapping season even starts. If you thought black walnut syrup was valuable, butternut syrup takes scarcity and pricing to another level. Butternut trees are closely related to walnuts, and their syrup has a delicate, sweet, nutty flavor that chefs go crazy for. Because so few farms produce it, bottles routinely sell for $120 or more per gallon, with small batch producers sometimes charging even higher prices for exclusive restaurant contracts. Here's where it gets interesting. Unlike maple, butternut syrup isn't widely available, which means chefs are competing for it in premium markets. High-end restaurants in New York, Chicago, and San Francisco have all featured butternut syrup on menus, and many farms can't produce enough to keep up with demand. If you're near gourmet markets or chef networks, this syrup is one of the most underserved, high-value niches in the U.S. right now. Even a handful of trees could turn into an exclusive income stream. Butternut syrup doesn't have unique regulations, but there is one important consideration. In some areas, butternut trees are listed as threatened due to disease. That doesn't make tapping illegal in most states, but it's smart to check with your local extension office before scaling production. If you've got healthy trees, you've got a rare advantage, and some regenerative farmers are even planting butternut-walnut hybrids designed to resist disease and improve yields. And as premium as butternut syrup is, it's not our top pick. The number one syrup on this list doesn't just sell for up to $200 per gallon. It's growing wild across the U.S., and almost no one is tapping it commercially. This is the one hardly anyone's talking about: Basswood syrup. Basswood trees, also known as American linden, grow abundantly across the Midwest, Northeast, and parts of the South, but they're almost completely ignored by syrup producers. That's a massive missed opportunity, because basswood sap has one of the highest natural sugar contents of any native tree. That means you get more syrup per gallon of sap and lower boiling costs compared to most other species. And here's the kicker: bottles of Basswood syrup can retail for $150 to $200 per gallon. There's virtually no commercial competition, and chefs who've discovered it rave about its light, floral, honey-like flavor. Some are already signing direct pre-order contracts before the first tap of the season opens. Basswood also pulls double duty for regenerative farms. It supports pollinators, lets you add a syrup enterprise without planting new crops, and it's already growing on thousands of properties as an underused resource. Basswood syrup is generally treated like maple and other tree syrups. You'll need to label it accurately as Basswood syrup. And while small batch direct-to-consumer sales are straightforward, selling wholesale to retailers or restaurants may require certified bottling and basic food safety compliance. Since basswood is still so rare commercially, most small producers focus on farmers markets and pre-sold chef contracts, where rules are less strict and profits are highest. When you combine ultra-high pricing, little competition, and trees that already exist on thousands of farms, Basswood syrup represents one of the most overlooked profit streams in small-scale agriculture today. And here's the kicker for retention: if you already produce maple or walnut syrup, adding basswood can double your income per tap with almost no additional infrastructure. So here's the big picture. If you're looking for the fastest profits, Hickory syrup stands out as one of the simplest ways to get started. It doesn't require expensive equipment, and the margins are incredible for small-batch producers. If you're near urban centers or high-end restaurant markets, syrups like Sycamore, birch, and black walnut are where chefs are already paying top dollar, and demand is still climbing. For farmers dealing with invasive species, there's an unexpected opportunity to turn a problem into profit by transforming those nuisance trees into something buyers actually want. And when it comes to the highest-earning syrups, butternut and basswood are in a league of their own. The takeaway here is simple: alternative syrups are more than just a creative product. They're a chance to diversify your income, build resilience, and turn trees you may already have into profitable premium offerings, as well as shade, forage, etc. These 7 syrups represent some overlooked farm income opportunities in the U.S. right now. Start small, test your local demand, and build relationships with buyers now, because once big producers catch on, these premium prices won't last forever. I'd love to hear from you. Which one of these syrups surprised you the most? Drop a comment below and let us know. And if you found this helpful, give the video a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next.